Hey guys, thanks to everyone for the comments, and a special thanks to everyone for the tips on detonators.
Hello, welcome back to my channel, and welcome to my spooky Halloween video. Just wanted to show off my Halloween costume before we started. Today I'm going to be doing just a mini review and comparison video for the Batman Vampire storyline by Doug Moench and Kelley Jones, and comparing it to the Batman vs. Dracula film that was lightly inspired by the comic. So Batman Vampire is a compilation of 3 Elseworld tales that were released in 1991, 1994, and 1999. The first one being Batman and Dracula Red Rain, followed subsequently by Batman Bloodstorm and Batman Crimson Mist. The first tale is the one that I'm going to focus on because it is the one, of course, that features Dracula. Now, this story begins with a usual detective case that Batman is looking at. It is a serial killing of various women, but of course, Bruce, being the world's greatest detective, quickly figures out that it is vampires and just immediately goes to try and defeat Dracula and stop him from committing all of these murders. As he encounters Dracula and his immense power, he encounters another female vampire named Tanya, who ends up helping him defeat Dracula ultimately. By the end of the comic, the castle ends up getting destroyed, Batman ends up defeating Dracula, but Tanya dies in the process, and Bruce is very upset about that, but he's a little bit distracted because by the end, Bruce is a vampire, and the subsequent issues he has to deal with that issue. Now, for my review of this comic, I think this comic is really silly, very early 90s, where it was still kind of trapped in the 80s, very pulpy stuff going on. A lot of the vampires have guns, a lot of the action is really pulpy, really cheesy, really fun. I really enjoy a lot of what's going on in this, just a bunch of really silly, crazy action stuff. I really like Kelley Jones's art style. I love this really spooky, intense, gothic look to the comic book. And of course, I adore Batman's huge ears. Ears that go all the way up to the ceiling. I love his giant bat ears and the way he just looks like a gothic monster, but he's just supposed to be a man. So I think this was the perfect artist to put on this Batman vampire story, especially when he is fighting Dracula. Like, look at these panels. Look at them. They're so cool, him fighting a vampire. I just, look at, that's Batman, but he's like a monster man. I love it. My biggest issue with the comic is, unfortunately, the complete and total lack of Dracula, at least on the page. A lot of this issue focuses on Dracula's victims, one of them being Tanya, who is his child, and the other ones being all of the humans in Gotham and subsequent areas who he has turned into kind of a vampire zombie slave, and it's Batman trying to help all of them. Of course, his mission would be to help the innocent people, but I wanted to see more of the Batman versus Dracula that was supposed to be going on in the comic. Like, this is the only time they really face off, is when Batman gets kidnapped by Dracula and then defeats him by bleeding everywhere and distracting Dracula. And in the end, killing him is just sort of an afterthought. I really wanted more of the intrigue between Batman and Dracula. I liked the themes going on about Dracula being so powerful that he could control Bruce with just his command, and then in the end Bruce ends up controlling Dracula with the use of his blood, and he knows it. So that was just such an interesting dynamic that they only did for about 3 pages, and then Dracula's on another page getting blown up when his castle blows up. So that was just a bit of a disappointment for me. I wanted to see more of Dracula, you know, the Dracula, the famous vampire. Like, finally collaborating in a Batman story? Come on. But in the end, I do really like this comic. I plan to read the subsequent stories this month. I just separated them from this video because they are more about Bruce dealing with being a vampire rather than Bruce and Dracula together. So I am excited to read more of this comic, and I highly recommend this comic for the spooky Halloween season. This month, I also watched the Batman vs. Dracula, a 2005 film based on the Batman show that came out in 2004. Now, this show, The Batman, was the one that came out directly after all of the Batman the Animated Series shows came out, and it was a big change to the art style and the dynamic of the show. In this show, Bruce Wayne is fairly younger and very new to the role as the Batman, and as of this movie, his only sidekick is Alfred, who helps him in the cave. I know further on in the series he eventually gets Batgirl and Robin, but here there is none of those characters present. It is just Bruce and Alfred dealing with the current conflict. I also know that this film takes place between, I believe, season 2 and season 3, so it is right before all the sidekicks come in, so it was a good opportunity to release this film where Batman had to deal with things on his own. Now, as for the plot of this movie, it is Batman, and he suddenly has a bunch of these vampire zombies going around Gotham, and he eventually figures out that this new character is Dracula, and he's the one causing it. He is feeding off of these citizens of Gotham, turning them into his blood slaves. He wants to defeat Batman because he thinks Batman has kind of stolen his gimmick as a man able to turn into a bat. And closer to the end, he also would like to revive his vampire wife using the body of the newly introduced Vicky Vale. This movie also features two very famous villains, both from the comics and from the show, those being the Penguin and the Joker. The Penguin in this movie is kind of the Renfield character. He's the full-on servant to Dracula, and I think Tom Kenny's performance is really, really funny as the Penguin, especially when he looks way more birdish and acts really, really funny. I really like that they used him as the Renfield character in this movie. But of course, my favorite part of this movie had to be the Joker's inclusion. He is voiced by Kevin Michael Richardson, and I think his design and his character was just immediately cool, immediately iconic to this show. I have only seen 2 episodes of this series before watching this film, and the first episode features the Joker, and they just understood the character immediately. I think it is such a fun depiction of the character, very cool, and I loved his storyline in this movie. He ends up getting bitten by Dracula and turning into one of the vampire zombie slaves, and Bruce drops everything he's doing to try and cure the Joker. He keeps him in the cave basement and he tests on him, and he does everything he can to cure Joker of his vampirism. Of course, he ends up succeeding, otherwise the show wouldn't have been able to go on. And I just think that that portion of the film was my favorite. I really liked their dynamic, and it really showed that Bruce cares about all human life, no matter how villainous, no matter how much they beat each other up every night. He stopped everything to try and cure the Joker, even though he's evil. Now for this movie as a whole, I thought that there was a lot of really fun stuff going on in the movie, but of course I have my criticisms. My first point being the actor who voices Dracula is Peter Stormare. I know he's pretty famous and pretty prolific, but I just don't understand his performance as Dracula. He does an odd accent and he's just a little too boring for the role. I wish he had hammed it up a bit more because this is Dracula. He's supposed to be this like big, powerful, strong guy, and I just thought that his performance was a bit too reserved for the role. I don't know, I just didn't think it was very good. He wasn't bad, but it just wasn't, you know, as good, honestly, as the voice acting for the Penguin and for the Joker. Secondly, for the characterization of Dracula, of course, this features one of my least favorite tropes, where Dracula is trying to resurrect his dead wife or find someone that looks like his dead wife. Thankfully, it is changed a little bit in this story, but it's almost kind of like an afterthought for the finale, and just to add Vicky Vale into the story, so I think that's kind of funny, where they were like, oh crap, what do we do with Dracula? We could do the dead wife thing again. Oh, but how do we do that? I don't know, figure it out. Like, it's just very, very funny stuff. I also think Vicky Vale's inclusion in this movie was just not really thought out. She is meant to show that Bruce cares about people and would do anything to save them, but we already had the really, really compelling middle part where Bruce was doing everything he could to help the Joker no matter the cost. So him at the end just rescuing Vicky Vale, and that's supposed to be the proof that he cares about people, a little bit weak there when he was literally doing everything to help one of his villains. Of course, Vicky Vale deserves to be rescued from this attempt to resurrect Dracula's dead wife, but that shouldn't have been the proof that Bruce cares about people. I think it just should have, you know, been the finale and him rescuing humans and curing everyone of the vampirism, etc. But I think this movie does a way better job having Batman and Dracula properly face off, as opposed to the comic where there was only about 3 pages. Here they don't do as much as I would have liked, but there is fight scenes between them. There are scenes between Bruce Wayne and Dracula together, you know, interacting and doing kind of a power play. Of course, Vicky Vale is there, and I just think that this is more of a whole idea. So I understand how this film was heavily inspired by this story, but of course they expanded upon it to fit the contents of both this show and making their own story with the dynamics between Batman and Dracula. So ultimately, I did enjoy this movie, even though I had some criticisms of it. It got a 3-star from me, and even though I have not really watched the show or know too much about the show yet, this was an excellent film on its own. You can watch it without knowing anything about the show, because it sets up all of the characters very well, and there is not too many characters that you have to keep track of. So I really, really enjoyed this movie. I thought it was a really, really fun Halloween experience. Of course, it is fun for the whole family, so I highly recommend The Batman vs. Dracula. So that was my review of both Batman Vampire, Batman and Dracula Red Reign, and The Batman vs. Dracula. You know me, I love the Batman, I love Batman, and I love Dracula, so having them together in any capacity, of course I was going to be getting into it, especially during this season. Now, I know that there are more Batman stories and DC-related stories that feature vampires, and I hope to read those this month as well. I have already read DC vs. Vampires, and I'm going to be reading the subsequent series. I believe it's called DC vs. Vampires All-Out War or something like that. I will be continuing and reading all of the vampire stories, and who knows if I will make a video on that. It depends on if I have anything to say on those subjects. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I hope everyone's been having a wonderful Halloween season, a wonderful spooky season, a wonderful fall, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye! Woo! Now, if you would excuse me, I have a very important role to play. Bruce Wayne.